And we're back. Listen, we have another guest author with us for this particular episode, Dianne Porter. She's joining us via video from Canberra, Australia. Never been there before, but it sounds like a beautiful place. It is the capital of Australia, I'm told. And she's the author of My Mother's Way of Dying Well. Welcome, Dianne. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to be here.
It's good having you, Dianne. Before we discuss your book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and bred in Canberra. I'm a descendant of Tidbinbilla pioneers. My father came here when he was a little boy, and I'm also a trained nurse. I worked in nursing for 35 years. I am a writer. I run a Shape No Singing group and a Jam Along group. I'm a grandmother of one little boy, mother of another, and a happy wife.
You are a very busy woman.
Yes. Life seems to get busy as you get older.
There you go. That's what I'm told. Very interesting title. My mother, assuming that the inspiration for this title in this book is actually what it suggests.
Yes.
Your mother's passing away, your mother and father's passing away, actually.
Yes.
Share with us your inspiration, a little bit about the book.
What I found in my nursing career is I was often with people who died, and there were so many things people didn't say. What I wanted to know is, what were those things people didn't say? So I figured that when I had my time of my parents' end of life, I would write down and record my feelings and emotions, what I noticed. The thing I noticed with my mum is she was the same as everyone else I'd nursed. There were lots of things she didn't say. She used to say, I'm 81, not 18. I've had a good life. And then she'd go to say something else and she'd stop. She'd say, oh, doesn't matter. So I wanted to know more, why do people do that? And then I wanted to look at what is grief like. So when I tried to talk to people about what I was going through, what stopped me? Why couldn't I? Why was my body like a vice? It would hold me in grief and I couldn't get the words out. I was stumbling. It was a very unpleasant experience. The great thing was that you can cry and write at the same time. So it became a real outlet for me to download all this huge emotional stuff while I was experiencing it, and I could cry with a box of tissues by the computer at the same time. Then I could explain to my husband why I couldn't make sense, why the dinner was burned all the time, why I couldn't drive the car and couldn't make the telephone work.
Wow, wow, interesting, interesting. Now you had a reason.
Yeah.
An explanation. And so could you describe for our viewing audience this dying well? What is dying well? How did your mother die well?
I had a first experience of my parents' close death when I was only 3.5. So I wasn't able to process that at that age. And she began to teach me about her death then. Because she had toxemia pregnancy and my father was in hospital in Sydney at the time, very close to death. She'd had a phone call to say he was very close to death. With toxemia, you can die of a stroke, you can die suddenly. And she was facing the possibility that if her parents didn't get to Canberra the next day, my sister and I would be put into a children's home and she'd be put into hospital and she could leave 2 little girls behind. So she decided then she better make us ready. So she started to teach me about death and dying from a very little age, from when I was a very young age rather. And it was a slow thing. Now, the first way she taught me was through reading Bible stories. So when she read the story about Jesus' crucifixion, I found that a very, very sad story, that such a lovely man could be treated so badly. And so that was one of the ways she introduced me to death. And the Bible's very good at teaching you about death and dying. Then as life went on, I became a nurse. She was a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. My father was a nurse. All my sisters are nurses. And so we talked about death around the table regularly. What I noticed was when she was dying, she would say, she picked me to be the one who walked beside her. So I went with her to all her medical appointments. And along the way, she would just tell me little things. When you get to here, you'll need to do this. Setting up a power of attorney so that if she was unconscious, I knew exactly what she wanted me to do. She wanted me to turn the machines off. So I knew before any of these events happened, 10 years before, what she wanted. And we talked about these kind of things. As she was dying, she told me, when I'm gone, you'll need to do this. You'll need to know that. Now, have you done this? So she was kind of like a director of her own death. And I just followed her instructions. After she died, I found little notes in her drawers. If you've got to here, then you need to do this. So all along the way, she was holding my hand, even after she died. And I found her preparation was an amazing way to die well. So she left feeling there was no real unfinished business on her side. And that took a huge burden off me. I know in my heart she was at peace about her death and at peace that I would be okay after her death.
Absolutely beautiful experience, beautiful story. Your mother apparently was an amazing individual.
She was.
An amazing woman. And so this assisted you in dealing with her passing, her transitioning. And is your book written in a way that could assist others in dealing with grief and sadness?
What I learned was the story of Jesus in the boat and the disciples that were in the boat. There was the big storm came over. And when you feel grief, it's like a huge storm. You're in the eye of the tornado. So what I did is I recorded each time I experienced that tornado at the age I was. So the first one was when I was a child. That's how the book opens, when I'm a child. And then as I went through each different step, like getting the diagnosis, her transfer to the hospital, her transfer to the hospice, her actual death, preparing her body for viewing after she died. That was something I didn't really want to do, but it became clear as her voice, as her executor, I had to do that. I had to make sure she looked how she would like to have looked before she was, the coffin was finally closed. So I recorded each revelation. So along the journey, there was another revelation and another one. So you go through the eye of the storm with me, and then suddenly you end out the other end. And so the end of the book is what happened after Mum died, like a year and a half later. I just wrote those little bits because they're the things people don't talk about. They don't say, what was it like a year and a half after your mother died? What I found was there was lots of things to process. Memories come at you. They are like a tidal wave, all these memories, and your world has come to an end. It was a world I loved. And I realized the Bible says, life, there is life beyond death. So the death of my world with my family and my mother ended. But I found the Bible then was a resource for building a new life because God's word doesn't pass away. You can use it to build again. And that's what I learned along this incredibly torrid journey. And I thought, wow, my husband's the one who told me, you need to write a book, Di. And so I did. If you read the back of the book, it says, if you like my book, thank him, because he said, Di, write this. I was writing him emails every day because when I tried to talk to him, even at the breakfast table, there never seemed to be a time of day where I could talk to him like I'm talking to you now. I would blubber, I would cry, I would get upset. I couldn't get the words out. They get stuck in my throat. And a lot of people experience this. So in a way, it's a manual of how to write your way through. So I found the email fantastic. I sent out a news report every day to all the people in my family. Then I didn't have to keep taking all the phone calls. They got a report. I said, this is what happened today. Somebody came to visit today. The grandchildren bought scones today. And then there was the story about the mouse in Mum's house. She said, did you know there's a mouse in my house? We've got to do something about it. And she says, your brother says you've got to kill it. So there was then the drama of what happened to the mouse. Did it actually die in the end? And it did. But this took 2 or 3 weeks. So while someone's dying, life is happening. And the big take home is you're not dead until you're actually dead. You're living all the way through to the end. And I think the dying time is a rich time. It's a different kind of time. Time doesn't make the same kind of sense. It moves really fast. Just before someone dies, it's going really super fast. And then when they die, it suddenly stops and the world slows down, just so slow. You think, oh my goodness, the traffic's not even moving. So it's those kind of experiences. It's a super real experience. And just before
what type of reviews? What type of reviews have you gotten from your book?
I've had Blue Ink Review. It's been in circulation for a while now. I've also had feedback from a lot of older people. I went to the palliative care group here in Canberra, and there's copies of my book in their library. They said to me, this is a book when somebody's facing a difficult situation, you just get this book and you put it gently in their hands and leave it with them. And they can just pick at it. They can take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and nibble. A lot of the older people who have read it loved it. They sit down and pretty well read it in one go. My husband tells me there's parts of it you just can't put it down because it's so exciting. You want to know what's happening next. So that's the kind of reviews I've had. I've had the professional reviews, the private reviews, and then I've also had the support of the Palliative Care Society here in Australia. And it's been, I think it was, some samples of it were published in The Lamp, which is a nurses' magazine that is circulated in New South Wales.
Well, it sounds like your husband is possibly your biggest supporter. And
he's a wonderful fan.
That's
He's a wonderful
good.
fan. He asks good questions. I say to him, ask me the question, I'll know the answer. I don't know what the question is. So he would ask me the question, oh, the answer is blah, blah. So I could give him the answer. Lots of things happen to you. You think you know what's going to happen. Now, with a nurse of over 35 years of experience, I felt I know what's going to happen. But you don't. When it's your own mother, how many times does your mother die? You only have one.
Correct.
And you've got to kind of come to terms with the one who created me, my creator, died. That's a sort of almost like my God died, if you understand that sense of being creator. I found Jesus was present with me while Mum was on the very last day. I had a real sense of God's presence and Jesus' presence. And he said to me, your mother, see your mother's feet. She doesn't have holes in her feet. I shared with her the sufferings she could bear. So I realized God is gracious, but fellowship with Christ's sufferings is such an education for us all. And I'm grateful, really, that I got to share my mother's journey and to experience that kind of suffering.
Beautiful, beautiful experience. I'm sure our viewers would love to purchase your book and read about your experience. And this could be a blessing to so many others that are just hearing about you
I
here
think so.
on the Books of the Month show. So exactly where can our viewers go to purchase the book?
At this stage, if you go to online to My Mother's Way of Dying Well, I've got my own website there. But Westwood Books is setting up a website for at this time as we go to air now, but it will possibly be set up when it finally goes to out to your people. So Westwood Books is the people who have it, but if you look up, if you just type in My Mother's Way of Dying Well, it'll come up on the internet and you can purchase it there. It is available on Google as well.
Awesome.
So,
Oh, beautiful. Well, you all have heard it here. You've seen it here. Awesome, awesome author with an awesome presentation of her personal experience. So listen, go and purchase the book, share it with your church family, share it with your personal family. I'm sure it'll be a blessing for every single one who reads it. Well, that ends it for this episode of Books of the Month. I've been your host, and I've enjoyed being your host. God bless you, and thank you for joining us all the way from Australia.
Thank you very much.
God bless you all. Have a great evening.